Well, there's an awful lot of outrage in this country all of a sudden, and we like to keep track of it just because it's interesting, and that tells you a lot about where we're going. People are outraged about virtually everything. Sometimes they get pretty creative about getting outraged. Here's one interesting example. A restaurant patron in Phoenix, Arizona recently complained to management about a photograph that was hanging in the restaurant of coal miners drinking after work. And the patron argued that because some people might think the coal miners who are covered in coal dust, you can see the picture on the screen, were instead in blackface, it was offensive and it should be taken down. What to make of this? Well, we decided to ask Robert Woodson. He's the president of the Woodson Center, and he joins us now. Mr. Woodson, thanks very much for coming on.
Pleased to be here.
So what does this story tell us?
It tells us that race grievance is just triumphing throughout the country, that I'm upset as a civil rights person that we would spend so much time being concerned about a picture hanging of white men in coal dust, and somehow that's offensive. It reflects attention away from more critical issues facing Black America.
Well, exactly.
We have more blacks killing other blacks in 1 year than we did in the 70 years of lynchings. We have, in other words, a 9/11 every 6 months of blacks killing blacks, and you're going to tell me our problem is a picture hanging.
So is it possible that, let's say you were in charge of the society or a big city, and your policies weren't helping at all, and people were still dying young and shooting each other, for example, maybe you would encourage people to be mad about irrelevant things like coal dust pictures so they wouldn't be mad at you for mismanaging their lives?
That's true, because many of those killings are occurring in cities run by Black Democrats over the past 40 years. So if politics and race were the issue, the question is, why are not blacks succeeding? If we look, in other words, at a time when whites were at their worst, blacks were at their best. Between 1920 and 1940, during segregation,
yes,
the education gap in the South was 3 years. 5 years for blacks, 8 years for whites. Within 20 years, we closed that gap within 6 months because we established schools, 5,000 Rosenwald schools. In part, Rosenwald, the CEO of Sears,
yes,
partnered with Booker T. Washington. He invested $450 million, $4 million. The black community matched that and built 5,000 Rosenwald schools, and so that's why we did it. There were 5 high schools in every major city, Baltimore, New York, and Atlanta, where the class sizes were 50 and plus. We had tattered school books, the buildings were torn down, but the test scores of those blacks in those high schools exceeded all of the test scores of whites in those same cities, even though we were spending less. So the issue, Tucker, that we ought to be talking about is why we ought to be talking about black resilience, and that is, how did we achieve, in the face of overt oppression, legal segregation, and why are we failing now post-civil rights in cities run, education systems run by their own people?
It's a great question. No one even seems to care about the schools anymore. Mr. Woodson, I know you do. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Super interesting.